Beep! 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 The sound was a metronome, the only heartbeat in the dark, cold room. I was checking the IV tower, my eyes scanning the drips. Saline running perfectly. Everything was quiet. Beep, beep, beep! My head snapped up. The monitor. The man in the bed, the John Doe who was the city's most feared secret, was crashing. I yelled for a doctor, my voice echoing as I ran to his side. My eyes darted down his IV line, and I saw it. A 5-inch air bubble, a perfect, shimmering, crystal-clear line of death, moving steadily, horribly toward the vein in his arm. I fumbled, my fingers clamping the line, stopping it just inches from his skin. What happened? I whispered. And I looked up, at the grieving brother. He wasn't crying, he wasn't praying. He was standing by the IV port, an empty 20cc syringe in his hand. His face, it wasn't sad. It was furious. A cold, reptilian rage. He had been murdering his own brother. Our eyes met. He knew I saw. I knew what he'd done. He didn't move. He just stared at me, the mask of the grieving brother melting away, revealing the monster underneath. The door burst open, the crash team flooding in. But it was too late. Not for the man in the bed. He was stabilizing. It was too late for me. My world is a symphony of beeps, hisses, and the constant, sterile smell of antiseptic. I'm an ICU nurse at St. Jude's, the city's largest public hospital. My suffering isn't a single wound. It's a daily 12-hour grind of adrenaline, exhaustion, and holding back my own tears as I fight for the lives of strangers. My name is Naya. I am 25 years old and my feet ache. They are my permanent, throbbing reminder of a life spent running from one crisis to the next. But I'm good at my job. I'm observant. I see the things others miss. The subtle tick in a patient's eyelid that means their pain meds are wearing off. The fractional drop in oxygen saturation before the alarm sounds. The family member whose grief seems more like impatience. My shift today was supposed to be simple. Just another Tuesday. You're in the VIP suite tonight, Nia, my charge nurse Jenna had said, handing me the chart. Room 12. A John Doe. He's special. Special was an understatement. The entire ICU floor, usually a chaotic hub of frantic families, was a ghost town. It was on lockdown. Men in sharp, dark suits with coiled earpieces and unsmiling faces stood at every entrance. They didn't talk. They just watched. They weren't cops. They were soldiers. They had cleared the entire wing for one man. The man in the bed was beautiful, young, maybe 29. His face, which should have been relaxed in the coma, was a mask of cold, chiseled power. His dark hair was matted with dried blood from a head laceration. A striking, intricate tattoo of a serpent snaked up his neck, its head disappearing behind his ear. His body, under the thin white sheet, was a roadmap of muscle and old, faint scars. This was not a man who had a single car accident. This was Enzo Moretti, the young Mafia Boss, the new ruthless king of the city's underworld. And he was my patient. His brother Dario had been a fixture by his bedside for 2 days. He was the perfect picture of grief. He was younger, softer looking, his eyes red-rimmed. The other nurses swooned over his tragic, loyal devotion. He loves him so much, Jenna had whispered to me by the nurse's station, her eyes tearing up. He hasn't left his side. He would sit for hours holding his brother's hand, his head bowed, his shoulders shaking in what we all thought were silent sobs. I wasn't so sure. I'm observant, remember? I saw the way his eyes didn't look at his brother, but at the monitors. I saw the way his grief seemed to flare up only when a nurse or a doctor entered the room. I saw the expensive, pristine shoes he wore, not the shoes of a man who had been sleeping in a hospital chair for 48 hours. I had that impatience feeling, but it was my job to chart vitals, not motives. For the first 8 hours of my shift, it was just pacing and humanity. It was the breathing room. I went in, I checked his lines, I suctioned his tube, I turned him to prevent bed sores. I spoke to him, my voice low and professional. Mr. Moretti, I'm just going to move your arm now. Your heart rate is strong. He was, in every medical sense, a perfect patient. Stable, unresponsive. The men in suits watched me, their eyes like hawks. Dario, the brother, would nod at me, his eyes full of pain, and whisper, "Thank you, nurse. Thank you for taking care of my brother." Tonight, as I was doing my midnight rounds, the floor was quiet. The men in suits were silent, looming shadows. I slipped into room 12, my rubber-soled shoes making no sound. The only light was the blue digital glow of the monitors. Dario was there as always, his head bowed, his shoulders shaking in that same silent sob by his brother's bed. I felt a pang of pity. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was just cynical. I went to the central IV tower to check the drips. Saline running at a steady KVO rate. Everything looked perfect. Beep, 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 beep. The heart monitor. Enzo's. It wasn't just fast, it was erratic. Ventricular fibrillation. He was crashing. "Doctor!" I yelled, my voice a reflex, hitting the crash cart button on the wall. I ran to his side, my eyes scanning his face, his lines. And then I saw it. The IV line, a large 5-inch air bubble, it was halfway down the tube, moving steadily, horribly toward the vein in his arm. It was an embolism, a deliberate, lethal injection of air. My blood ran cold. I fumbled, clamping the line with my fingers, stopping it, just inches from the port in his arm. "What happened?" I whispered, and I looked up at Dario. He wasn't crying. He wasn't praying. He was standing by the IV port, an empty 20cc syringe in his hand. His face. It wasn't sad, it was furious. Cold reptilian rage. He had been injecting air into the line. He had been murdering his own brother. And he had been caught. Our eyes met. He knew I saw. I knew what he'd done. He didn't move. He just stared at me, the mask of the grieving brother melting away, revealing the monster underneath. The door burst open, the crash team flooding in, but it was too late. Not for Enzo, he was stabilizing. The team was taking over. It was too late for me. Where are you watching from today? Let me know in the comments. And smash that like button and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. The crash team worked in a blur of shouted orders and charging paddles. Clear. Thump. Rhythm returning. Sinus tachycardia. He's back. I stood pressed against the wall, my hands trembling so hard I had to clasp them together to hide it. I watched the line on the monitor stabilize. Enzo was alive. But the real danger hadn't passed. It had just shifted targets. I felt a heavy hand on my shoulder. I jumped, a small squeak escaping my throat. It was Dario. He wasn't looking at his brother. He was looking down at me, his face a perfect mask of concern for the other doctors to see. But his eyes were dead sharks. "You saved him, Nia," he whispered, his voice low and smooth, like oil on pavement. "You were very observant." He leaned in closer, ostensibly to hug me in gratitude. His lips brushed my ear. "If you say a word," he breathed, the menace radiating off him like heat. "If you tell a single soul about the syringe, I will find your little sister. I know she gets out of school at 3 p.m. I know she walks home." My blood turned to ice. He knew. He knew everything about me. He pulled back, smiling at the doctors. "She's a hero," he announced loudly. "This nurse is a hero." I fled. I muttered something about needing supplies and ran from the room. I hyperventilated in the supply closet, clutching my chest. I couldn't go to the police. Dario owned the precinct. Everyone knew the Morettis had the chief in their pocket. I couldn't go to the hospital admin. They were terrified of the family. I was alone. Then I remembered. Yesterday, a man had tried to visit Enzo. A terrifying man. He was older, maybe 45, with a face like a topographic map of violence, a jagged scar running from his temple to his jaw. He had argued with Dario in the hallway. Dario had dismissed him, calling him a relic and banning him from the floor. But I had seen the way that man looked at Enzo. It wasn't with greed, it was with a ferocious, protective loyalty. His name? I remembered hearing Dario mock him. Silas. If Dario wanted him gone, then Silas was the only person I could trust. I grabbed my phone, my fingers shaking. I didn't have his number, but I remembered the logo on the jacket he'd been holding. Cerberus Security. I searched it. A private contractor. I dialed the main line. I need to speak to Silas. I whispered as soon as it connected. Tell him. Tell him the prince didn't fall. He was pushed. I finished my shift in a haze of terror. Every shadow looked like Dario. Every orderly looked like a hitman. At 7 a.m. I clocked out. I didn't go to my car. I knew with a cold certainty that my car would be a trap. Instead, I took the stairs to the basement laundry exit, a path only staff knew. I stepped out into the cool morning air of the alleyway, clutching my bag. The street was empty. Quiet. Too quiet. A black sedan idled at the end of the alley. The window rolled down. It wasn't Dario. It was two men I'd seen standing guard outside Enzo's room earlier. They weren't wearing suits anymore. They were wearing tactical gear. They stepped out, blocking the exit. Nurse Nia, the tall one said, smiling. He held a suppressor-equipped pistol at his side, not even bothering to hide it. Mr. Moretti wants to thank you personally. Get in. I backed up. No, I said, my voice trembling. I'm taking the bus. You're taking a ride, the second man said, reaching for me. I turned to run back inside, but the laundry door clicked shut. Locked. I was trapped. The rising stakes hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't a threat anymore. This was an execution. The tall man raised his gun. Don't make it messy, sweetheart. Screech! A massive armored SUV roared into the alley from the other side, clipping the dumpster and sending sparks flying. It drifted sideways, blocking the sedan. The door flew open before the wheels even stopped. It was him. Silas. He didn't look like a relic. He looked like a war machine. He moved with a terrifying, efficient speed. He didn't have a gun drawn. He had a collapsible baton that snapped open with a thwack. The first gunman turned, raising his pistol, but Silas was already inside his guard. Crack! The sound of bone breaking was sickeningly loud. The gunman dropped, screaming. The second man fired. Silas didn't flinch. He took the round in his armored vest, grunted, and stepped forward, delivering a brutal, spinning kick that sent the man crashing into the brick wall. It was over in 6 seconds. Silas turned to me. His face, with that jagged scar, was terrifying up close. But his eyes, they weren't cold like Dario's. They were frantic. You the nurse? He growled. The one who called? I nodded, unable to speak. Get in, he barked, jerking his head toward the SUV. We have about 3 minutes before the rest of the family gets here. We drove for an hour, taking turns and switchbacks that made my head spin, ensuring we weren't followed. Silas didn't speak. He drove with one hand, the other holding a lit cigarette, his eyes constantly scanning the mirrors. We finally pulled into a private underground garage beneath a luxury high-rise. Where are we? I asked, my voice small. The Lion's Den, Silas grunted. Enzo's private safe house. Only he and I know the code. Not even Dario knows this place exists. We went up in a private elevator to the penthouse. It was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, modern art, Italian leather furniture. But it felt cold. Empty. It was the home of a man who lived alone. This was our breathing room. The immediate danger was gone, replaced by a heavy, suffocating silence. Silas went to the kitchen, grabbed a bottle of water, and slid it across the marble island to me. Drink, he ordered. It wasn't a request. He sat opposite me, cleaning the blood off his knuckles with a rag. Now, tell me exactly what you saw. Don't leave anything out. I told him. The air bubble, the syringe, the look on Dario's face, the threat against my sister. When I finished, Silas didn't explode. He didn't yell. He went perfectly, terrifyingly still. He stared at the wall, his jaw working. I knew it, he whispered, his voice rough with a mixture of rage and grief. I knew that little snake was making a move. He sent me to Miami on a fool's errand. Said Enzo wanted me to check on a shipment. It was a lie to get me away from the bed. He looked at me then. Really looked at me. You saved his life, Nia. You stopped the air. I just did my job, I said. No, Silas said, shaking his head. You started a war. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city. The dramatic irony hung heavy in the room. The news on the massive TV screen in the corner was playing a press conference. There was Dario, looking tearful and exhausted, telling the reporters, "My brother is a fighter. We are praying for a miracle. The family is united." "Look at him," Silas spat at the screen. "The grieving brother, the loyal deputy." He turned to me. "The whole city thinks he's a saint. They think I'm the rogue element because I disappeared, but we know." He pointed a scarred finger between us. "You and me, we're the only ones who know the truth. And that makes us the most dangerous people in this city." He walked over to a hidden panel in the wall, punching in a code. It slid open to reveal a wall of weaponry. "Make yourself comfortable, Nia. You're not going back to the hospital. You're not going home. Until Enzo wakes up, you belong to the inner circle now." The penthouse safe house was a fortress, but it felt like a prison. We watched the news on the massive screens. Dario was playing the role of his life, weeping for the cameras, announcing a $1 million reward for information leading to the arrest of the rogue security contractor who had threatened the hospital staff. That was Silas. They were painting us as the villains. "He's going to finish it tonight," Silas said, checking the load on an assault rifle. "He can't risk Enzo waking up. The air bubble failed? Tonight it'll be something cleaner, a pillow, or a heart failure induced by meds." My stomach churned. Enzo is defenseless. He's surrounded by Dario's men. "Which is why we're going to get him," Silas said, his voice calm, terrifyingly matter-of-fact. "We're extracting the package." "Extracting? From the ICU? It's a fortress, Silas. You said it yourself. There are guards at every door." "Guards look for threats," Silas said, tossing me a bundle of clothes. "They don't look for laundry." The plan was insane. It was the kind that made my hands shake just thinking about it. Silas had contacts. The inner circle wasn't just him. He had a guy in the sanitation department. 2 hours later, I was in the back of a commercial laundry truck, hidden beneath a pile of soiled linens, clutching a portable oxygen tank and a bag of stolen adrenaline. Silas was up front, wearing a stolen uniform. We rolled into the hospital loading dock at 3 a.m. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. This was my workplace, my sanctuary. Now it was a battlefield. I used my key card, thank God they hadn't deactivated it yet, to get us into the service elevator. Silas moved like a ghost, silencing the one guard by the freight lift with a sleeper hold before the man could even reach for his radio. We reached the ICU floor. It was silent. I knew the rotation. The shift change was in 2 minutes. That was our window. Silas stayed back watching the hall. I walked into room 12, my heart in my throat. The guard at the door frowned. "Who are you?" "Phlebotomy," I lied, holding up a tray of vials. "Stat blood draw ordered by Dr. Evans." It was a flimsy lie, but I said it with the exhausted annoyance of a nurse who just wanted to go home. He grunted and stepped aside. I burst into the room. Enzo was still there. Alive. "Okay, big guy," I whispered, my hands flying as I disconnected the monitors, silencing the alarms before they could trigger. "We're going for a ride." Silas slipped in a second later. He didn't waste time. He scooped Enzo up, all 200 pounds of muscle and dead weight, like he was a child. We threw him onto a laundry cart, covering him with sheets. We were halfway to the elevator when the alarm sounded. Not the medical alarm, the security alarm. Dario hadn't trusted the shift change. "Run," Silas growled. He kicked the laundry cart, sending it careening down the hall, and turned, raising his rifle. The elevator dinged open, not empty. 3 of Dario's men. The firefight was instantaneous and deafening in the sterile hallway. I didn't look back. I grabbed the cart and sprinted, pushing Enzo toward the stairwell, the sound of gunfire erupting behind me. We made it to the van. I don't know how. Silas was bleeding from a graze on his cheek. The back window was shattered, but we were moving. We drove to a secondary location, an abandoned veterinary clinic in the industrial district that Silas owned off the books. It wasn't the penthouse, but it had medical supplies. We laid Enzo on the metal table. He looked pale, deathly still. The ride had been rough. "Is he?" Silas asked, his voice tight with fear. "His pulse is thready," I said, snapping into nurse mode. "Hand me the saline. Start a line, now." I worked for an hour, stabilizing him, cleaning the head wound, checking his pupils. Silas stood guard at the door, watching the street, but every few seconds his eyes would dart back to his boss. Around dawn it happened. A groan, low, rough, like gravel grinding together. I froze. Enzo? His eyelids fluttered. They opened. His eyes weren't the cold, calculated blue I had expected from the stories. They were hazy, unfocused, and filled with pain. He blinked, trying to clear the fog. His gaze drifted around the dingy clinic, then landed on Silas. A flicker of recognition. "See," he rasped. "I'm here, boss," Silas said, stepping forward, his voice breaking. "I've got you." Enzo's eyes shifted. They landed on me. I was hovering over him, checking his IV. He stared at me for a long time. I expected suspicion. I expected the dawn to demand who I was. Instead, he did something that stopped my heart. He reached out, his hand trembling uncontrollably, and his fingers brushed my wrist. His skin was burning hot. "The angel," he whispered. It was barely audible. "You stopped the air." He remembered. He had been locked in his own body, unable to move, but he had seen me save him. He had felt my hands on the line. "I'm Nia," I whispered, covering his trembling hand with mine. "I'm your nurse, you're safe." He squeezed my hand. It was weak, desperate. "Don't leave," he choked out, his eyes pleading. The ruthless Mafia Boss, the man who terrified the city, was begging me not to go. He was broken, stripped of his power, and he was clinging to me as his only lifeline. "I'm not going anywhere," I promised. And in that moment, looking at his rugged, pain-etched face, I knew I wasn't just his nurse anymore. I was the only thing standing between him and the dark. The peace lasted 4 hours. That was it. Silas had gone to secure the perimeter. I was sitting with Enzo, who had drifted back into a restless sleep. My phone, which I had turned off, suddenly lit up. It rebooted itself. Strange, I hadn't touched it. Then a message appeared on the screen. Not a text, a broadcast alert. I clicked it open. It was a news feed. Live. Dario was at a podium, flanked by the police commissioner and the FBI. "Citizens," Dario said, his face a mask of righteous fury. "We have identified the terrorists who kidnapped my brother from his hospital bed. They are armed and extremely dangerous." 2 photos flashed on the screen. One was Silas. The other was me. My ID photo from the hospital, my name. Nia Williams. "Nia Williams," Dario continued, his voice dripping with venom. "A disgraced nurse with a history of drug theft. A lie. And Silas Vane, a rogue mercenary. We have reason to believe they have murdered Mateo Volkov and are holding his body for ransom. The family is offering $5 million for their capture, dead or alive." My phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. "I see you, nurse. Turn on the GPS." I stared at the phone in horror. They hadn't just framed us. They had hacked us. They knew my name. They knew my face. And if they had hacked my phone, they had my location. Crash. The front window of the clinic shattered. A canister rolled across the floor, hissing. Smoke. Tear gas. "Silas!" I screamed. "Down!" Silas roared, bursting in from the back room. "They found us!" This hit like a physical blow. We hadn't escaped. We had led them right to us. We were trapped in a tin can, Enzo couldn't walk, and the entire city, cops, feds, and mafia, was outside, ready to burn us to the ground. The tear gas canister spun on the floor, spewing white, choking smoke. The clinic was a kill box. "Masks!" Silas roared, tossing me a ventilator from the medical shelf. He didn't put one on himself. He grabbed a heavy metal table, flipping it over to create a barricade in front of Enzo. "Nia, get him to the back door. I'll buy you time." "You can't fight them all?" I screamed over the sound of shattering glass. Bullets were already chewing up the front wall. "I don't have to win," Silas growled, racking the slide of his rifle. "I just have to bleed them." He looked at Enzo, then at me. "Get the Dawn out. Go." I grabbed Enzo. He was heavy, dead weight, groggy from the meds and the trauma. I draped his arm over my shoulder. Come on, Enzo, I grunted, my legs burning. We have to move. He stumbled, his feet dragging, but he was trying. We reached the back alley exit. I kicked the door open into the rain. We weren't alone. A black sedan screeched to a halt, blocking the exit. 2 men jumped out. Rinaldi soldiers, hired by Dario to ensure no loose ends. They raised their weapons. I froze. I had no gun. I was just a nurse. Then Enzo moved. It wasn't fast, he was barely standing, but it was decisive. He reached into my pocket where I'd shoved Silas's backup pistol earlier. His hand, shaking a moment ago, steadied as he raised the weapon. Bang! Bang! 2 shots. Center mass. The men dropped. Enzo sagged against me, the gun smoking in his hand. He looked at me, his eyes fever bright but lucid. I told you, he rasped, a ghost of a smirk on his bloody lips. I'm hard to kill. We weren't safe yet. We scrambled into the Rinaldi's sedan. I shoved Enzo into the passenger seat and jumped behind the wheel. I had never driven a getaway car. I slammed the gas, fishtailing onto the wet pavement, just as Silas burst out the back door, limping, firing behind him. He dove into the back seat. Drive, he roared. The warehouse district, Pier 4. Why there? I shouted, swerving to avoid a police cruiser. Because that's where the family meets, Enzo said, his voice gaining strength. That's where Dario is going to be crowned king tonight. And I think I should attend my own funeral. The warehouse was a cathedral of steel and shadows. Hundreds of men, capos, soldiers, politicians on the payroll, were gathered in the center under stark, industrial lights. Dario stood on a raised platform, looking every inch the grieving, reluctant leader. He raised a glass. To Matteo, he said, his voice catching perfectly. My brother, my heart. The feds and the traitors took him from us, but tonight we rise. We were watching from the catwalks above. Enzo was leaning heavily on Silas, his face pale, bandage around his head soaked through. But he straightened his spine. He adjusted his torn hospital gown like it was a bespoke suit. Nia, he whispered, stay here. No, I said, grabbing his hand. I saved you twice. I'm seeing this through. He looked at me, that intense blue fire back in his eyes. He nodded. We descended the metal stairs. The sound of our footsteps echoed in the silence following the toast. Heads turned, one by one. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Dario froze, his glass halfway to his mouth. He looked like he was seeing a ghost. Enzo didn't shout. He didn't run. He walked, slow, painful, inevitable. He walked right through the crowd, the sea of hardened criminals parting for him in terrified silence. Silas walked a step behind, his rifle raised. I walked beside him. Dario, Enzo said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried to the back of the room. You seem surprised. Matteo, Dario stammered, his face draining of color. You're alive. Thank God. I thought... The nurse, Enzo said, gesturing to me, is the only reason I'm breathing. The nurse saw the syringe. A murmur went through the crowd. The inner circle, the loyal capos, looked at Dario. They saw the sweat. They saw the fear. It's a lie, Dario screamed, pointing at me. She's a Fed. She's crazy. Kill them. Kill them all. No one moved. Not a single soldier raised a gun. Because you don't shoot the king when he's looking you in the eye. Enzo stepped onto the platform. He stood toe-to-toe with his brother. You wanted the crown, little brother? Enzo asked softly. You wanted the power? He ripped the Don's ring off Dario's finger. You forgot the first rule. Power isn't taken. It's earned. Enzo turned to Silas. Take him. It wasn't a fight. It was a judgment. Silas stepped forward. Dario tried to run, but his own guards blocked him. They were loyal to the Don, not the pretender. Silas dragged Dario away, kicking and screaming, into the darkness of the back rooms. The unthinkable punishment would happen off-screen, but the screams silenced the room. Enzo turned to the crowd. He looked exhausted, bleeding, and terrifying. There is no new Dawn, he said. There is only me. Then he collapsed. I caught him. I always catch him. 3 weeks later. The sun was shining on the private terrace of the Volkov estate. It was a different world from the dark hospital room. Enzo was sitting in a chair, his side bandaged, reading a newspaper. He looked healed. I walked out with a tray of coffee. I wasn't wearing scrubs. I was wearing a sundress. Time. For your meds, Mr. Volkov, I teased. He put the paper down. He looked at me. It was the look, the one that melted my knees. I told you, he said, reaching out to pull me onto his lap. Call me Enzo. Enzo? I whispered, tracing the line of his jaw. Are you sure about this? I'm just a nurse. You, he said, his voice fierce, are the woman who walked into hell for me. You faced down Dario. You drove a getaway car. You are not just anything, Mia. You are the queen. He didn't just give me money. He gave me a place at his side. Not as a subordinate, as a partner. Silas, now fully reinstated as the right hand, watched from the balcony door, giving me a rare, respectful nod. The villain network was shattered. Dario was gone. The city was quiet. Enzo kissed me, a slow, deep kiss that tasted of coffee and promise. I have a question, he murmured against my lips. What? My brother, he said you were observant, that you noticed everything. I do. Did you notice, he said, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket, that I've been in love with you since the moment I woke up? I laughed, tears prickling my eyes. I might have missed that one. Then let me make it clear, he said, opening the box. A diamond, sharp and bright as a star. Stay forever. I looked at the ring. I looked at the man who had burned the world down just to keep me safe. Check my vitals, I whispered, leaning in. I think my heart just skipped a beat. What was your favorite part of Nia and Enzo's story? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more.